Hi, everyone. I have been doing a weekly affirmation practice and sharing that, and also creating some videos about classic texts that talk about affirmations. And I have got one of my favorite, actually, writing craft books, as well as a chapter on affirmations in this book. Hi, I'm Michelle Tracy Berger, award-winning writer and creativity coach, and I'm so happy that you've found me. So I want to put in a plug for this book that came out in a long time ago, 2002, Making a Literary Life: Advice for Writers and Other Dreamers by Carolyn See. Carolyn See was this amazing writer, critic. She did memoirs, she did fiction. She also wrote about how to create literary community. And I found this book probably around 2002, 2003, somewhere around there when it was early in its publication. And it, besides what I'm going to talk about with affirmations, it just has incredible, encouraging information and thoughts about craft. So if this is not in your library, I highly recommend it. I want to talk about what she says related to affirmations. I just have always found this really inspiring. So it's the chapter that this is in is called "Do Some Magic," and basically she's talking about ways in which writers can empower themselves that may seem a little, what's the term, woo woo, right? Because she was also writing. Now we actually have quite a bit of good sort of empirical scientific information about the power of visualization, the power of self-talk, which is what I'm really passionate about and how important that is. But she's presenting it as something that is a little bit more mystical, but she also talks about the world of the imagination. And so anything is possible in the world of the imagination. And so she talks about, doing some affirmations. And I'm just going to read a couple of sections and just talk about how this might land for us. So she says, how about doing some affirmations? What if you look in the mirror first thing in the morning and suggest, I'm a powerful, loving, and creative being, and I can handle it, and I can have anything I want. Then say it again and again. Or I deserve the very best, and now is the time for it. So she goes on to give some other examples. And then she talks about kind of the history of where did affirmations kind of come from in terms of popular literature. And we know it goes all the way back to the 19th century. And then she relates this idea of affirmations to the writing life. And she says, affirmations make a nice counterpart to the other wretched noise that gets turned up in your brain when you write or even think about writing. Now, I have other videos on inner critics and inner evaluators and inner judges. So most of us as creatives have to have a battle, have an ongoing discussion, dialogue, fight with some of those more negative voices. And so we have those already in our psyche, right? And then we also have to deal with outside voices. So she says, affirmations make a nice counterpart to the other wretched noise that gets turned up in your brain when you write or even think about writing. Look at Mr. Big Man. Carolyn See isn't half the writer she thinks she is. Dwight MacDonald wrote about me in Playboy years ago, and there it still is in stunning black and white. That's why it's nice to remember that I'm, quote, I'm powerful, loving, creative. And I just think that's so resonant with us. Most of us have received some kind of feedback, critical evaluation of our work that really wasn't very kind. If you're a creative person and you're doing this professionally or semi-professionally, you will have something at some point that you receive that really feels like a diminishment, not a fair evaluation of your work. So there's that, as well as the challenge of creating more consistently. Then she says, these voices aren't always personal. Forget about being published. You're learning the art of the short story for the love of it, and nobody publishes short stories. I've heard this many more times than I like to remember from reputable writers with good hearts who want to save their students from rejection. So the other thing that tends to happen to creative people is that sometimes our mentors, other people in the field, will say something categorically, right? So this idea that, nobody publishes short stories. So they were saying that back to her, in the early 2000s, and people publish short stories all the time. And then the other thing that she says that I have underlined, which is so powerful, everybody's seen it, quote, everybody's seen it, nobody wants it. Her own sweet editor said that to her about her then non-existent paperback of her memoir. Everybody's seen it and nobody wants it. She writes, yikes, ow, the pain. She also goes on to say, it's a good thing I remembered that, quote, I deserve the best and now is the time for it, and thus got up the courage to call a friend of mine at a university press. The paperback, called Dreaming, is still in print, doing very nicely, thank God. So I think that's also just very powerful. Her own editor said that. I can't imagine if I had received something like, everybody's seen this and nobody wants it, about something that I wrote, like a manuscript. That would be really, really hard. So I want you to think about, what defenses do we have in the face of people saying difficult things, negative things? Most of us don't always have good defenses. And so affirmations, again, can be that a type of armor that we use, a type of intervention that we use that can course correct when we experience something really difficult and challenging. So she gives a couple of other examples about things that people were saying at the time. The whole publishing business is owned by people who don't care about literature. All the smaller houses are gone. So you can insert the things that you hear about publishing, about writing today. They're not that dissimilar from 20 something years ago. Right? So these are cyclical things that people say. And also, there are things that about the publishing industry that are cyclical, that are challenging, that people say all the time. So she goes on to say, in other words, why write? Or in other words, why create? Everybody will see it. Nobody will want it. You probably aren't half the writer you think you are. So she's saying that. And then she says, that's why it's nice to reassure your timid, frightened brain that you deserve the very best. And now is the time for it. That you're a powerful, loving, and creative person and can have anything you want. That you're perfectly happy and satisfied right now in this moment. That even when your relatives tell you that you can't make a living from writing, you can say to yourself, and even to them, if you feel like it, money comes to me now in expected and unexpected ways. So then she goes on to give some other examples as well about like things that you can say to yourself and I think in this section, she's just saying, trying to get your brain to focus on something else, right? It's something that is more helpful in the moment. We know a lot more about our nervous systems and kind of calming the nervous system down and making ourselves feel safe. And I have some videos about this, and I think it's so important for creative people to explore the dynamics of their somatic nervous system and to understand what helps us to feel safe to create. So then she goes on the next section, which I also love. She talks about her writing students. And so she says, and these are some tricks that she offers, or some techniques that she offers. She says, I can't tell you how many times my writing students have said to me, I can't do dialogue, or I have so much trouble with plot, or I don't know what to put in this story and what to cut. I can't seem to figure out what's important. And then she says, I say to them, how about if you could do dialogue, or you have the perfect plot right there in your brain, or you're the perfect editor, you just don't know it yet. Of course, they don't buy it, they can't buy it. So I suggest they say out loud in the car and at home, up until now, I couldn't do dialogue, but now I love it. I can't wait to type in those quotation remarks and see what my characters have to say. And up until now, I had some trouble with plot, but now it's my greatest strength. I'm a fiend for a plot. So she gives that phrase up until now to allow ourselves, I think, kind of this grace period to begin to embrace this idea. Yeah, I mean, most things around writing and creative practice, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, right? And a lot of times when we say these negative things to ourselves, we just usually haven't had the practice or put in the practice yet to get better at something. So that up until now gives us kind of allows us to hedge our bets a little bit, to say that and then move forward with the work at hand. And I love this, the next thing that she says, and I have put this in a lot of my work. Why is it so easy to believe the awful and never to believe the good? So, why is it so easy to believe the awful and never to believe the good? And I think that sometimes we have this kind of, we feel like we're being more realistic if we just embrace, the negative or this idea of being kind of hyper realistic. And that doesn't always work, I think, as a creative person. Like we need a balance. There's definitely the more critical, the more evaluative side of us has a role in our creative work, but usually it has when we're, especially when we're first starting out, we don't have a lot of evidence of our own success or ability to be successful. That voice has an oversized role, or that way of thinking has an oversized role. So we're trying to right size things here. I think that's another way to think about affirmations, and more kind of neutral. I always say if you can't get to positive, get out of negative, at least get into neutral, right? Say something neutral about your work or yourself. Then she offers at the end things that I have used, and I should say I've used her principles, I've used her techniques from this section, and highly recommend if it resonates with you to get her book and to read the full chapter. But she says, I have two affirmations that I'm crazy about. One is, my ideas come faster than I can write, and they're all good ideas. I'll say that again. My ideas come faster than I can write, and they're all good ideas. Imagine saying that to yourself before your writing session and saying it over and over and over, or saying it, a couple of times every day for a couple of weeks. Think about how that the rhythm of saying that might change that feeling if you really struggle with getting to the page or feeling like your ideas are worthy. That might unlock something that could be really helpful. And the other one that she has is quite fun to do, and it's 4 short lines. I see it, I feel it, I know it, I got it. I see it, I feel it, I know it, I got it. I see it, I feel it, I know it, I got it. It's an amazing rhythm. So she says this works. It's a powerful spiritual exercise, a meditation repeated 20 to 50 times. It does something to the brain. It banishes fear and brings inspiration. I see it, I feel it, I know it, I got it. I have used that at different times in my writing career. It has bolstered my courage to do certain things, to take chances, to take risks. It's just really, really fun, right? And anything that, I mean, you can make it into a kind of a mantra. You can make it into a repeated phrasing. You can do it that repetition. And we talked in other videos. I've talked about the power of repetition for that getting into the subconscious mind. So again, I just think this is it's a delightful, very useful craft book. But this, and also her chapter on do some magic, and I there's a lot of other stuff in there about visualization and other tricks and tips that she has. I highly recommend you check it out, and it's just super super fun. She talks about treasure maps, and kind of a literary generosity. So, how does this land for you? How are your affirmations going? What's inspiring you right now with the things that you're saying to yourself? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Obviously, love for you to subscribe so you can get the weekly affirmations, as well as I do a lot of other support and inspiration for creative writers and also for people in the creative journey. And if you know a creative person who needs a little bit more support, inspiration, affirmation, please share this video and help us build this community And thank you so much for everything that you're already doing in terms of your own creative work. And always stay inspired. And I'll see you soon.